Okay, it's 12 o'clock. Let's begin. Call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman,
She'll be joining us via Zoom, I believe.
Vice Mayor Moore, and Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Tercivia.
Tercivia will not be here. He'll be here for the 1:30.
Okay,
Okay, to begin with, everybody check your cell phones, please. And after we do that, thank you. Can we all stand, please, for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And this is just a budget meeting, but we do have public comments from Lynn Kearney. I don't see Lynn Kearney here, though. Supposed to be in person, possibly she's calling in? No. Okay, if Lynn shows up, we'll allow her to comment. Let's move on then to the budget presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, staff, press. Good to see the press here, huh? Back in the saddle. It's good. Again, today's presentation will be our preliminary presentation of the fiscal year 23 budget. David and I, along with the department head, spent a lot of time putting this together, and we'll kind of go from there. So as I said last year, and I'm glad I get to say it again, our financial position remains strong here in Highland Beach. Strong not only for Palm Beach County, but in the state of Florida and South Florida. A position that has allowed us to undertake and complete many needed strategic initiatives and priorities driven by the commission's leadership and the continuing commitment and hard work of our great employees. A position that has allowed us to be recognized as the safest city in Florida, one of the top 10 places to retire in Florida, and a community with one of the lowest tax rates in Palm Beach County. It is important as we evaluate our financial position and our budget, we look at it over a 2 or 3 year horizon. I think that's important because we have a game plan that we started executing last year that we knew would take multiple years to do. And we need to make sure we stay on that plan, stay the course, and continue to communicate to our residents why we need to stay on this course. A course that is defining our town organization, our level of service, and the health and sense of place for our 3 miles of paradise. One of the biggest things that we will be doing is fire department implementation, new fire station, fire rescue staffing, vehicles, apparatus, specialty equipment, and then the necessary support services that Matrix laid out in their plan with HR and purchasing assistance. So those items also are part of our plan that we knew, and we got 92% resident approval to do this. And in so doing, we understood that there'd be a duplicative costs and services and the cost to put this in place and then to run a parallel system for a short period of time in that 2 to 3 year horizon. We're also continuing to transfer the debt from the general fund to the water and sewer fund. And we did that per the Raftalis water and sewer study, where it allowed us to move and migrate that over. And that's why we're going to see a slight reduction in our millage rate this year. Undertake large capital projects. We have the sewer lining, we have lift station rehabilitation and raising, things that were protecting us from climate vulnerability. And then we deployed the police unit, the Marine unit this year. And you'll see some of those additional costs and expense borne in the police department budget. And we're taking all of these big steps in an unsettled economic condition. We've survived hopefully most or all of the pandemic. And now we've moved into a period of growth in the taxable rate that we saw this year at 10.75%, which seems to be shortly followed by a recession. So we continue to move forward with our 2 to 3 year game plan in these unsettled economic conditions. And how do we plan and move forward? We have some of that strategy here, and I'll need the commission's assistance and guidance on how we want to undertake some of those items. And the other part of the commitment, and all the times we did all of our talks to condos and groups, is we're going to hold our operating millage flat. We're not going to increase it. You're not going to see a huge decrease in the operating, but we're going to hold it consistent while we slowly over that period of time reduce our debt service millage. That's where we're going to start seeing some of the big drops in the millage rate. And David will talk that we have a couple of notes that are going to be dropping off the books in the next couple of fiscal years. So you're going to start seeing some big precipitous drops in the debt service millage. And we're all doing this and stabilized, supported by strong fund balance reserves that we have. And we did allocate that $4 million last year for fire services. And we're doing this while we do all this strategic stuff. And again, our theme for this year is working to enhance 3 miles of paradise. So that's kind of our budget theme as we move forward this year. But again, I want to set the stage to remember that we have a 2 to 3 year plan to get this fire station in place and the support services behind it to move it forward, holding our operating millage flat and reducing our debt millage. And it's going to take us several years to do that. And we're doing all of this in this very unsettled economic conditions that while look really strong at the moment, I think we're going to see some washout from that in the next fiscal year that we have to be prepared for. And David and I are looking at that over multiple years and making sure we plan that moving forward. So as we go into our preliminary budget, again, you can see a slight decrease in the millage rate, and that's basically per the plan to reduce that transfer of debt service over to the water fund. But we did see a 10.75% increase. That is good. It did generate some additional revenues, and it did a couple of things for us. One, it reduces the rate at which we thought we would be into reserves to support the fire department implementation. And that's a good thing because you're going to see later on in our presentation that fire's up 13% because of the new cost borne along with the natural increase in our costs with Delray. So we have the ability with that growth rate this year to handle some of that without getting into the reserves as quickly. And potentially, if there's some maintenance of this higher elevation of tax rate, the amount of loan that we may need comes down a little bit. That's why we have that 18-month draw schedule that you all approved a couple weeks ago that will reduce the interest rate expense in latter years. So this is all good news for us and working forward. Again, what you'll see in the budget this year, last year we pledged $642,000. This year it's $375,000. Most of that $375,000 is an EMS vehicle that we're purchasing off the sheriff contract. So that's in there that we're taking care of. Again, the biggest expense in one area that we saw year over year is fire. Again, you had the natural 4% from the Delray contract, but now we're going to be at next fiscal year, we're going to add in a fire chief. We'll have continued expense and costs with design, architect, building the station. So we're slowly moving into that. With the budget, what you will not see is the fire station construction. We're not there yet. So that will come to the commission upon approval. And then we'll do a budget amendment and start addressing how that falls into the budget. Again, design and consulting fees. Funding of salaries and benefits. Those, again, our biggest expense tends to be salaries and personnel. So what you're seeing here is we are assuming healthcare and insurance renewals at about 7%. Last year, we guessed 10 and we were reduction of 2.5%. So 7 seems pretty conservative. I asked David for 10. He said, no, 7 is probably a better number. I might've been overshooting. So we're looking at 7%, and we'll have those, as we recall from our budget schedule, we'll get those numbers later in the summer when we go out to bid. So we'll get that like in August. The commission and the FAB will look at those renewal rate structures. The FOP, which is our unionized non-police force, is 3.5%. It's the last year of their agreement. That's in place. The PBA, you have various anywhere from 2 to 8.1% increases, and it depends on the step and years of service. So it's kind of all over the place in the last year of that agreement. And then we're proposing 5% for non-union employees, and then a salary table adjustment that we did last year, again this year, to begin to look at this escalating cost of living that we're seeing and experiencing through this inflation. And that's becoming a real issue. I've spent some time speaking with other managers, trying to come up with how are other communities going to address that. And that's what's at the bottom here I will be asking the commission to consider, because of these things, some type of one-off, one-time payment to employees similar to Palm Beach Gardens, Boynton Beach. And there's a handful of other communities in various ways that have taken action to help their employees now because of those inflationary prices and the continuing growth as we're seeing 8-9% month over month inflation, gas prices now hitting up over $5 a gallon. There's no end in sight in the short term to address that. Now, we have the ability to handle that and book it this year. The ability to book it this year is predicated on our ability to slow certain elements of the implementation of fire rescue. And we've had some longer standing vacancies and openings in police and clerk's office, along with not bringing in the HR as initially anticipated last year. I had a bigger number in the manager's budget. Working with my team, we were able to sort that out, do a little more cost-effective implementation. So we've recognized some savings in this current fiscal year that we could take care of a one-time payment. We'll come back to revisit where those numbers fall out to do that. So it's a one-time. And the reason why I don't want to make it a permanent increase in salary is that, again, we're now potentially going into these recessionary looks over the next few years. We don't want to book that moving forward again. So it's a one-time payment and then next year's cost structure. And then here are some of those big capital expenditures that we're looking at next year. EMS vehicle at 275, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on all of those elements that we are looking at our 1:30 meeting today that go into that vehicle. Again, we're holding the entry signs at 150. I know some people said that's way too much. I just held a number. And it's a placeholder in the discretionary sales tax. So it's not booked on our general fund. It's in that discretionary sales tax fund. Same number that we have budgeted this year. I just pushed it forward. And then as we go through this process that you've all deployed here over the next 8 months, we can get it to a better number. Road and bridge repairs, the Lido Bridge that we are responsible for has shown some needs of repair. So we need to go and do some general upkeep and maintenance on the bridge. Lift station 2, again, kind of going back to fixing the lift stations. And then we have our VFDs on our wells. Basically all the pumps and motors in the plant need to be replaced. So we have another big ticket item there. So those are our very large capital. We have other smaller capital expenses. Those are the big ticket items. Now, so what have we done this year? What were the accomplishments we did with the dollars that the commission allotted in our budget? So we continued that big push on our fire rescue department, where we contracted, we have an architect that's working on some of those designs. Those are coming into shape now. We have a construction manager at risk. We went through the CMAR process. We have somebody, Kaufman Lynn, sitting there ready to go. We've got Dr. Cohen as our medical director. We've, as of Friday, thank you, Teresa, COPCN has been given to the county. So they have our application to operate in its entirety. The commission closed the $5 million private bank loan with Synovus Bank. We've adopted a fire code. We're actively recruiting a fire chief, and we're continuing with our contract audit. That's just on the fire side. We've looked at the water and sewer updates. Dave can give you more information later on in the meeting. That kind of is definitely in his strength and wheelhouse. Sanitary rehabilitation project. We've taken some bids on that. We will discuss that later, but looking at that lining project, rehabilitate stations 2 and 3, rehabilitate well 6, replace the membrane on the turbo pumps, stormwater repair in Lido. Next. We've implemented the police department marine unit. Police department is going through the accreditation process. We've adopted a building recertification ordinance and program that in July, Jeff's going to walk you through how do we align that back with the state program. We completed the overhead crosswalk lighting project. We adopted a right-of-way ordinance. We did a fund balance update. Thank God I got David here to work out some of our accounting kinks and wrinkles and got our finance department humming along here. And he's also going to be wrapping up an investment policy update. So we've been making some really big strides. And again, and it goes back to that plan, the organization of Highland Beach is continuing to transform and reset itself to accommodate this growth. As I always joke around saying the biggest small town in South Florida, we're adding a big service arm to our operation. And these are some of the activities that we need to do. Now, moving forward, what are we doing? On the fire side, we're going to be commencing the construction of the fire station, apparatus, equipment, tying down the details to draws on the loan. We're going to start recruiting fire personnel in the latter part of next year. We're going to formalize operational procedures. So there's a lot of things that need to still be tied down. There'll be a lot of work on the fire side of things. Marine accessory structures ordinance. We've gone and done some of the tours with the planning board. The next step is we'll talk later at the 1:30 meeting. So that's really going to be next year by the time we really get into tackling how we want that ordinance structures or any changes we want. The town signs. 2 big steps. We got both of our unions are up again. So we got to go back into union negotiations for the next 3 years thereafter. With the PBA and the FOP, we got to undertake those bridge repairs. We got to rehabilitate Station 8. We got those other lift station stuff we were indicated earlier. We're going to look moving forward with accounting and finance, accuracy, speed, and reporting. I'll give you some more updates on that, kind of the window into that later on today. And then we're going to really start forming that HR personnel policies, procedures, programs, services, things that really add the foundation for growth. Now, we're doing that all with that, I said, a slight reduction in the millage rate. So the operating holds for the 4th year at 3.2294. The reduction of the debt service millage is again for that part moving stuff over the water. That comes down about 9%. And then the combined millage is 3.875, again, for a reduction of the millage rate. I know some folks may want a ginormous reduction or a more significant reduction. Those are hard to do when we go back to that game plan. We are trying to put this fire station in place and operate a fire department while we do this. So how do we compare? I took the last 3 years to kind of give you an idea how we move around. Town of Palm Beach, again, is the lowest with Manalapan and South Palm. So those are the 3 ahead of us are always seem to be lower. Now, as we recall, when we were going through the fire, Manalapan and South Palm have the sweetheart fire deal with the county. No one else gets their beautiful deal. So they have a really great controlled and structured fire contract with Palm Beach County. They don't pay the MSTU. So they're not paying the full freight where you look at like a Juneau, their operating millage is around 2, but because they have to pay the full MSTU for fire, they're up at 5.38. So you can see the significance of that full millage of fire on local communities. Town of Palm Beach, $25 billion in taxable value. So they're like 8 to 10 times larger than us. So they have what they draw from to generate their taxes. They don't need to go as much. And then you see the other communities, Boca's the next closest, Gulfstream. Then you got Juneau Beach, Ocean Ridge, Tequesta. Again, Tequesta's always kind of been a benchmark with a full service community. Same with North Palm, and you see how their rates are significantly higher. And we're doing ours to be similar at these rates. So we are making those strategic and managed steps to control our cost structure as we go to a fully independent community. Next. So what does that entail when you see your big tax bill? Well, your tax bill will be about 16.9 mils. That's the 3rd lowest. One of the communities that are lower than us, I think South Palm actually goes up to 20. So I think they pay into the county's library fund. So we actually go a little bit lower when you talk about total millage rate. We go from place 4 to place 3, which is good. And you can see what's made up in there. Some of your biggest payments are the counties, goes to the county's operating, the school operating millages, and then we have a host of smaller specialty funds, the South Florida Water Management District, Child Services, Healthcare District, Florida Inland Navigation District kind of rounds it out to get to our millage rate of 16.916, plus or minus, because we're ahead of many of these other taxing agencies to see if they go up or down. But I would guess we're going to be around somewhere around 16.9. And again, you see that kind of percentage breakdown of where our budget is. So going into the more details to the budget, you'll see that our tax growth, again, as we indicated, is up over 3 billion. That's really remarkable and great. And again, on average, we're seeing right around 5%. Seems to be kind of our rolling average over the years, year over year on our value increases, taking the ebbs and flows of it. Next. And then again, you see we're kind of that 3.2294, that operating hold as we do this. And then you'll see the debt service millage. And as David gets into more details later on, that's going to basically come back down to zero as it relates to the water debt. David.
Thank you, Marshall. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at a macro view of each of these funds, and then we'll go down actually to a micro view. So right now, as you're aware, as we just discussed, ad valorem taxes represent about 74% of our total budget. We have some miscellaneous revenues in there, which are really just administrative reimbursements back to the general fund from those other proprietary funds. We have intergovernmental revenue, right? That's from the state of Florida, right? The state of Florida is doing well, gas tax, sales tax, tourism, then, we get our proportionate share of that, and that's always a good thing. So that's the macro view. Now what I'm doing here is I'm continuing on the revenue side. When I say revenue, really, it's our sources of funds. So we're going to have sources of funds, and then we're also going to match that up with uses of funds. And so here you can see that property taxes, at the end of the day, last year, our budget was about $13.2 million. We're looking at approximately $14.075 million. It's a slight increase of 6.3% that we see there. Again, most of these things we estimate from the property appraiser what our property taxes is. We estimated our intergovernmental, our shared revenues from the overall health of the state of Florida. Our permits and fees continue to strengthen and do well. And most of our other revenues, what we did is we looked at our actual data through the month of April, and we projected where we would think we'd be at the end of the year.
Back up, please.
Yes, sir.
Why are we projecting interest income to drop off so much?
Well, number one, I know that interest rates have been increasing, right? But historically, we haven't really earned that much in interest income. One of my mandates from Marshall is to look more at our investment policy and be more active in that. And so at the end of the day, I was just trying to be conservative on what I thought that we can earn. Remember, we're going to be pulling a little bit of money down for the fire side. And so we're going to have a little bit less funds in there. I was just trying to be conservative in nature in that.
And if I could add to that, one of the things that David's going to look at in that investment policy side is right now we're required to have a custodial account set up or arrangement per our investment policy. That costs us about $10,000 to $15,000 a year just to have a third party look at what we do. We need to get away from that for the amount of money that we actually have in investment and change that policy. When we do that, we should see an uptick back to the interest income. So we had it sitting in 3 funds prior.
Right.
They weren't really doing anything and they weren't managed well. Again, now the interest rate, as David said, is starting to come back, but we need to get that custodial account, which is kind of gobbling up some of our interest earnings.
Right.
So the 29,000 is a significant understatement.
Yeah, it's our best estimate right now. I think that the Florida Prime provides 88 basis points to be conservative. I agree with you, but obviously being dealing with governmental funds, we have to be conservative, right? We are restricted as far as what we can invest in. We can't necessarily invest in Amazon or Tesla.
No,
or
I understand
like
we're very limited.
Yes.
But, I mean, even treasuries, 10-year treasuries are 3 point something now.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And again, what we'll tend to do is we'll tend to look at it in thirds, right? So we'll tend to take a third of our excess funds and we'll put that in a little bit longer maturities. We'll
You'll
take
set up a
another
ladder.
third. Yeah.
Ladders.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. So we'll ladder
Okay.
that. I was just basically going on the Florida Prime, 88 basis points and just trying to be conservative. And I would rather be wrong in the right direction. You know, I would rather come back to you and tell you that, yeah, you know, we're going to do much better. It's a small line item in the budget. It doesn't mean it's not important. It is very important. But for preliminary budget wise, I just wanted to be conservative on my revenue projections.
Okay, and I wanted to let you know I saw it.
Yes, sir. Understand. No, I understand. No, attention to detail. No, that's very, very
Okay.
important. So I agree with you. So right there, you know, again, so we're looking here, what we're looking at is we're looking at a macro view, right? All of the general fund sources of revenue, okay? And what that change is. Now what we're going to shift to, so that's our sources of revenue. So now we're looking at it at a macro level. We're going to look at how do we, what are the expenses associated with that? Again, we got $14.075 million of our estimated sources of revenue. How do we plan on spending that? And here you can see that salaries, and I added the dollar bill there. Salaries represent, you know, salaries, taxes, retirement, health insurance, and workers' compensation are all those individual line items that go into salaries. So that's just not salaries. Actually, salaries represent about 67%, health insurance 14%, taxes 5%, retirement contribution approximately 14%. So, but anyway, so we spend only 37% on salaries and related information there. Operating expenditures represent about 54%. And really what we're excited about here is you can see that there's a reduction in our expenditures. There's a reduction there of interfund transfers having to do with the reduction in the debt service millage of the $93,000. So at the end of the day, we're only looking at about a 5.6% preliminary increase in our expenditures. Now,
Can I ask a question?
absolutely, sir.
No, and I'm going to go back and ask questions on some of these other
No
slides, but on this one, you have 4 FTEs.
Yes.
I can account for the fire chief, you know, there's one in the Public Works Department, and there's one on your staff. Where's the 4th one?
So the 4th one is more of like a reclass, an open position. So I don't know that we really added 4, but 4 came online versus the prior year. So what you'll see this year is a little bit more precise projections on HR, thanks to David, where we're looking truly at position budgeting year over year versus kind of, so police had some openings. You have a fire chief, you got a management analyst, you have a reclassification of an assistant town manager that's kind of taking over shared service HR component of it. And then you had kind of an open position that's now that will be filled next year. So that kind of takes it to 4.
Kind of a swing.
Yeah, it's kind of a swing, but it's about 4 FTs in because there's.
I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
Because it seemed that was the case because I didn't see any reference to it later. So, okay, I got it.
Yes, sir. And so let me see. So this right here is again, the macro view of our expenditures. Now we're going to go, now we dive in a little bit deeper, right? So here's the next level of that same number, $14.075 million. Now we break it out here by department level. And so here you can see one of the changes that we did here, we added a new department called Shared Support Services. And basically what that department there will be responsible for, that's not only the labor, but it's also for IT and communication, computers, computer network, phones, all of that there's not anything around here that isn't IT related and has a service contract and has updates to that. And so instead of having it piecemealed all throughout all the various departments, as you can see there, we wanted to house it in one area. Number one, so we can better control the cost of it. And number two, we can also better allocate that cost out to the other departments, as well as the water department, the sewer department, and the building department and things like that. So what we need to do is, number one, we needed to aggregate it. And then that way we can disseminate it, excuse me, more appropriately. And then the other big swing that you'll see here, as you notice, is our fire rescue. Those right there, as Marshall had indicated, those are the big swings in our budget. And so there you can see that budget, the preliminary budget, not only includes the increase from the city of Delray Beach, but also that new position for the one FTE for the fire chief and related expenses.
The other one you didn't think of, John, was a custodian we're adding to Public Works.
Okay.
So that's the one you didn't
I
think.
mentioned the public works, you had that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, Public Works Department, Fire Chief, what was the other one? Fire Marshal staff, and the open slot.
So now we went from general revenues, right? We went to general expenditures. We then went to a more of a deeper dive into the departments by expenditures. And the preliminary budget here at the end of fiscal year 2023, as proposed here, is that now we're looking at the general fund balances. And so basically what I did here is I rolled forward our general fund balances. I'm on slide number 16.
Yeah.
And so as you can see here, what's really going to be driving the slight decrease in our fund balance at this time next year, this is what we're projecting here, is that shift is at $375,000 of capital purchase related to the fire department. Now, we do have a new fund balance policy. And so if you recall, 16.7% is for budget stabilization, disaster recovery. The fixed portion, as you can see there, you see it goes from $4 million down to $3.625 million,
Yeah.
right? Well, that's where for that additional $375,000, that's where we're pulling that out of. So that no longer stays fixed. But you can also see that our unassigned, we're anticipating at this early phase of the game, we're anticipating, our unassigned fund balance will be about $1.7 million at this point next year, based on our preliminary budget. Now, so that is the general fund side of life. That's just to do all things government related. This fund is our discretionary sales tax surtax fund. This fund here, we predominantly want to do our big major expenditures as Marshall had indicated. So and the next slide really will show some things. So on the next slide, here was our plan in FY22, right? Our current year that we're in. So we had planned to take a discretionary sales tax dollars and spend it on these certain projects. Well, as you can see here I added a column called status, right? Some projects, obviously, we accomplished, and we've accomplished at a cost less than what we had budgeted for. Some projects we didn't get around to, i.e. the signs. So what happens is those funds move into FY23. Some projects are new, and I might have included in there. Other projects, we decided later on to cancel them, and you can see that. Other projects there, the last category is to be completed. What I mean by that is right now, when you create an FY23 budget, I need to make some assumptions. So one of my assumptions for these projects was, okay, by this time at the end of this fiscal year, they will be completed. So, and in talking with staff, they concur with that. And so what we're anticipating is that you can see that our discretionary sales tax will go from about $344,000 at the end of this year. Will go down to about $189,000. That's net. So basically, we'll get more money in from the state of Florida, and I'm being conservative with that. I estimated it to be about a 9% increase just because of the overall health of the state of Florida. And so we'll have that money coming in. We'll have those projects that we moved forward coming out, plus our new projects going out. At the end of the day, what I'm predicting is by September 30th, 2023, that should be our fund balance, in that fund, about $189,000. So of the 5 funds, that's fund number 2. Fund number 3, now we get into the building department, same kind of idea. So the building department, this is the aggregate level, right? Charges for services represent about 96% of the total revenue associated with this fund. Transfers from the general fund represent a fixed amount allocated for labor for planning and zoning activity. The reason why we do that is planning and zoning activity is considered a governmental responsibility as opposed to a separate building department activity. So we allocate that amount over just in fairness. Overall, this fund is doing exceptionally well. Obviously, the reason why is people are just investing more into their real estate, which is a good thing. So the revenue side is very healthy. The expenditure side, this right here were just some of our preliminary assumptions. We obviously had increases, or we're proposing increases in salaries, increase in operational expenses. Again, most of that increase in operational expenses is due to a third party. So we outsource some of our inspection services to a company called CAP. And so we're seeing, obviously, we projected an increase in that expenditure as well. Capital projects are down a little bit. At the end of the day, this fund is projected to keep doing well. And so you can see there on slide number 22 that I'm projecting that number 1, there'll be no need for that fund to pull from its reserves, right? And that the fact that they are budget neutral, but at the end of the day, my estimate is that their fund balance will be about $2.3 million. So and that's very healthy.
Back up one, why are you showing the $55,000 transfer from the general fund?
Because so remember, so let me back up a couple slides. This is the building department, right? Oh, no, sorry, sales tax.
Yeah, back at 22.
Yeah, right there. Right. So here we're looking at the revenue side, right? So that's considered revenue to the general, revenue to the building department fund.
Right.
For an allocation, proportionate share of their estimated labor costs for those staff that do planning and zoning. So what we said is, we said, all right, you have an employee over there that's in your department.
Right.
Let's just use round figures. Let's just say that 75% of their time is used in the building department, and 25%, and I'm making up these figures,
Right.
25% of their time is used for more planning and zoning. In order to be accurate and correct, I need to make sure that the general fund pays for their portion.
Got it.
Yep. And so that's all.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So here we are on the water fund, right? So remember, the water fund, water and sewer are separate from general government, right? The idea of a water and sewer fund is to be self-sustaining, right? And that's our ultimate goal. And that's always been the ultimate goal with when we had the rate consultants come in from Raftellus. That is the goal of a healthy water sewer fund. So our preliminary budget assumed a 10% rate increase as forecasted by the consultant. We assume no additional ARPA funds during FY23. The town will get its second tranche of money from ARPA from ARPA funds. I almost said Oprah, from ARPA funds We will get that in September of this year. So that'll be booked in this fiscal year. Remember, we're looking at next fiscal year. Next fiscal year, we're not anticipating that, right? And so you can see that the ARPA funds obviously reduced the revenue going forward. So again, charges for services, that reduction in ARPA funds, money from reserves, and as well as transfers from the general fund. Again, that $93,000, you'll keep seeing that. That's because of the reduction in the debt service millage. Now, David, why did revenue go down? You know, that's a constant question, right? So 24. So here what we're looking at is we're looking at base fees increased, right, from the recommended study. So you can see there that the blue solid lines are base fees, and the orange line is usage. So our base fees increased, but our usage decreased, right? Now, you can see there at the month of June, we see a little bit of pickup, right? So again, this is a preliminary forecast. So we can see that, hey, we're starting to get a little bit better, but at the end of the day, we are still lower than where we were at in last June, compared to last June. So you can see what that black line is, right? That black line shows on the top right chart, the black line shows, hey, this is where we were last year with consumption. And then we lowered our fixed revenue, and we added a new charge as well as a new irrigation usage. But you can also see that irrigation usage, when I compare it to June this time last year to this June this year, you can still that we're still seeing a little bit of a reduction. Now, what this slide here is intended to do was just to kind of show you the history. If you recall, this was the history of our rates, right? So remember, FY 2020, that was our rate structure, $33.59 a base fee, and we had these different tiers. When we adjusted rates in April 1st of 2021, we increased the base fee, and we did a slight increase to the water consumption fee, as well as what we did is we broke out irrigation. Okay. Then in 2022, we kept the base fees the same, but what we did is we increased the usage fees. And here, what I wanted to try to show you is that, and then the last column there is what the rates would be with the 10% increase in rates. But remember, our preliminary budget includes us increasing the base fees as well.
I'll stay on this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we need to analyze where we dropped off versus our projections.
Yeah.
And obviously, we can't do that today.
Right.
But did we ask our consultants to analyze it, or do we need to get Natasha to do that?
So what I would suggest, we had a meeting, brought Raf Tallison, double looked, but we sold less water. We raised the rates, we sold less water.
Yeah, but we need to know which bucket. Where did we fall off?
From there, they said, here are some things that are going to strain the system. If the sales kind of go down, we're seeing chemical costs through the roof. Labor is going to come up a little bit more than projections. David's history with FGUA, which is this super conglomerate of utility systems in Florida. I don't know that we need Ref Tallis that much as David could walk you through all of these things with the vice mayor together. I think you guys have a rate team in place now based on experiences.
Okay, so first thing I need to know is which bucket, was it the 236 bucket, the 320 bucket, the 496 bucket? Which bucket did we fall off of our projections on?
Okay.
Okay. That's number one. Possibly, for example, we fell off our projections on the very heavy users. or maybe we fell off all the way across the board. Because we don't know what to do about the upcoming rates for FY '23 until we know what happened
Sure.
this past year.
And you can see there on the bottom right-hand screen is the water customer by class.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
we-
we have those three classes there and you can see that, the multifamily.
We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The vast majority of the use sits with the condos.
Yeah.
So that's also what we need to know was, number one, we obviously want people to use less water. That's part of what our objective was. So one might say that there was a victory here. Less water is being used. On the other hand, because of that, we're a victim on the revenue side. One would also ask, why are we adding an additional individual? Why are we increasing our personnel costs when we're not hitting our revenue targets? So that's another question we have to ask ourselves. We're adding another individual in public works, but we're missing our revenue.
Public Works is on the general fund side.
Pardon me?
The addition in Public Works is not to the water and sewer funds have not grown on labor. That's on the Public Works side for a custodian to clean buildings.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Okay.
just answered that.
Right.
Okay, so,
Matter of fact, you'll see the next slide when we talk about the expenditure side of life. You'll see.
okay,
that right
so you took care of that question. So we need to do an analysis here before we change our rate structure, which is
Yes, sir.
ahead of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
if you could get together with the vice mayor,
Mhm.
who did the original analysis for us when we set the rates, so we know where we stand, that'd be great.
yes. And again, that's what I guess I'm trying to portray here is that, we do look at base fees, right? We do look at the consumption. I've got a good history of it. And we should be able to tell you which customer class, single family, multifamily, or other, which bucket our projections fell a little bit flat in. So,
That-
right.
That'd be great. And that'll certainly help us on what adjustments do we need to make moving forward.
And remember, when Raftellus completed their report, right, part of that report was, I think it was a 5-year or a 3-year rate table that said,
Correct.
hey, listen, at the end of year X, you need a rate increase. At the end of year Y, you need a rate increase. And so and what we're seeing is that, it seems like sticking to that rate increase plan does seem to be reality. But again, this is just preliminary and we'll have to look at that.
Well,
I would like to add that, if you look at the orange line on 27.
Yep.
It's showing an increase.
Yeah.
And it could continue to increase. And then we kind of come back to target.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it happens to come at a time when over the next year or two, we're going to have a recession where people could pull back even more and, reduce their usage. So while we're winning to reduce the misuse of water, the overall demand could correct itself if it wasn't for the recession.
that's possible. My only point is we have the luxury of having data available to us.
Exactly. Now we
Let's
have
take a look. Our decision might be, stay the course.
Stay the course.
Yeah.
Perfect.
On the other hand, it may not be. So let's look at the data
Yes,
and then let's make our decision.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
But
sir.
this gives us a good yellow light as to where it's going and what we need to do.
Yeah, I always like the data to help us make decisions.
Yeah, and again, I'm hoping that when I get August, right? So that when we bill out, for in August, right? I'm hoping to add another piece of the puzzle to this. And then, that this is why we do obviously a preliminary budget to say, hey, look, based on our data right now, this is where we're at. I'm hoping that I know that the base fees won't change, right? You know what I mean? It's that consumption level. And yes, although they are going up, it's the difference between the black line, the black horizontal line on the left side there versus where we're at. in between those, you can see the downturn.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. You know, where we lost some momentum there. And that's typical, right? It's called price elasticity.
Yes, it
When
is.
you raise prices, people react in a certain way, right? To lower their prices.
Listen, nor do we want to penalize our residents
Yeah.
for saving on water.
Right.
So
absolutely.
the data might say, hey, you got to change your pricing and increase it. On the other hand, we may not want to increase it. We may want to take the hit because we don't want to penalize people for saving water.
And they'll adjust and get used to what they think is what their past habits have been.
Yeah, let's just make decisions on facts. That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, we're
Yes,
on the
sir.
same wavelength.
Yes, sir. Now we're looking at our expenditures, right? So now I'm on slide 26, right? You can see that based on their union contract, 3.6% or 3.4% is projected for salaries and related. We did drop off a little bit of operating expenditures. Our capital plan, obviously, we reduced that back a little bit this year. And our debt service, again, our debt service, and I'll be able to show you that in our next slide, our debt service remains relatively constant, except for this time next year. So the columns there that you're seeing on the right-hand side, that's our debt service. So debt service remains constant through 2023 and reduces in 2024 by $369,000 and then reduces another $369,000 by the end of FY25. The reason why that is I also showed you our loans as well as when the payments are. And so it's as well as you can see that second one down, it matures on March of 2024. And so that's why the payments are staggered like that. But by this time next year, our debt service drops $369,000. By this time, the following year, FY 2025, it drops another. So in 2 years, that drops by $738,000. So we're going from a $1.5 million debt service, a fixed cost, we're going down to a little bit under $800,000.
So what were those dates again? Like the September 30th is this year?
Yeah.
That's 22.
Right.
And then the March 24th is 23.
The March, yeah, you're right. That's just when it has two, these are type of bonds. So every 6 months, there's a principal and interest payment. And so those right there are when the payments.
Okay, so the December is 23,
Yeah.
and then the September is 24,
Mhm.
and then the February is 24.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. And so, but so this right here is the what we're kind of looking at. We're saying, hey, right now, preliminary, just giving you the data, we have a rate increase that the rate consultant had forecasted. If we adhere to that, this is where we'll be. Number two, we also have a potential, not this year that we're working on, but next year, our fixed costs for debt service will be reduced by $369,000. And so we can do a little more analysis on that.
Excellent.
So it sounds like even if we're a little bit less than where we want to be at income at this point because of lower usage, which is what we were aiming for, it'll balance itself out when our debt service goes down.
Yeah, the only thing I can't do at this point is I can't predict where our expenditures will be in 2024, 2025. I can probably give you a good ballpark, but right now, with inflation and things like that, our chemical costs. But I will tell you that anytime you can lower a fixed fee, that's
That's a
always a
big
good
deal.
day. Yeah.
And the total debt is around 10 million?
Yeah, I don't know that number off the top of my head, and I apologize. I should. I don't know that off the top of my head, but
It's around 10? Okay, it's around 10-ish.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
yep, right. Right. So what does that mean? What is all this revenue, this expenditure, the debt service? What does that mean to our fund balance? Well, right here, you can see that my early projections of FY '22, our fund balance indicates that expenditures, right, will exceed revenues $157,000. Okay, this amount was offset because we got the ARPA funds. Okay. Based on our proposed budget for FY '23, expenditures will exceed revenues by $696,000. Well, David, why is that such a big swing, right? Why am I going from $157,000 in a deficit? Now I'm up to $696,000. Well, we had gotten the ARPA funds. And then number two, we're hopefully we can do something with rates. We had reduction in water usage. But here's the thing that rating agencies and other people look at as far as a healthy utility fund. It's called estimated days cash. And what estimated days cash looks at, it looks at your fund balance divided by your operating expenditures divided by 365 days a year. So what that tells us in the rating agency world is how many days can you go paying your normal operating expenditures with your current balance of cash that you have on hand? So we're at a healthy level. We're at 256 days. I like it to be 365. Usually AAA rated is 365 days of cash on hand. I don't like it to be less than 180 days. But anyway, that's where it projects out where I think our estimated days cash will be.
For the revenue side for 23, you utilized roughly the same revenue as 22?
For 23, no, I increased it by $240,000. Oh, well, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can see, I'm sorry. Yeah, in total, yeah. And the reason why is because I'm increasing our water revenue by $240,000 for the anticipated 10% rate increase. But and then I reduced that because we're not getting the ARPA funds.
Because no ARP.
Yes, sir. So the net
Netted
debt,
out to about,
$27,000 increase in revenue.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
So does this mean we really have to do something? Because that $700,000,
Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot of money.
that's, yeah, it's unacceptable.
It's a killer.
Yeah, I think that's where David's going to go from here is you're going to start looking more granular detail to see, that water usage really dropped off a lot. When Raftalis looked at it and shared the information with David and I, they were like, you sold significantly less water than we anticipated in the study. Why is that? We had kind of a wet, dry season this year, but I don't know if that's the only thing driving it. So we got to take a look to make sure it's that or did the rate structures really scare off the heavy users?
Well, right. And what we did here, you can see that we went from about a $33 base fee, right? We went up to $40, right? In our base fee, which, okay, good.
Did you also increase the flat rate for 23?
Yes, I did, sir.
You did.
Yes.
Damn it.
I know. No, so basically that's what we did. And then what we did is we added, we bumped up, well, matter of fact, you can see that for multifamily usage charges, 1,000 to 3,000, we went from $2.41 per 1,000 gallons. We then we took that rate and we went from 0 to 10,000 gallons. We actually dropped that rate. You know what I mean? So we dropped that to $2.13 per 1,000 gallons. So we increased our base fees, right? But we added an irrigation customer class, which is good. But we also messed around, not in a bad way, but we also reconfigured our tiers. But some of the tiers for the lower user level class, we reduced those. For the higher level class, we increased those.
Well,
So
aside
I'm
from
not
just.
following what you, excuse me. I didn't follow you.
see in the middle, see where it says April 1st, 2021 rates?
Yep, $40 down.
Yeah, so see the next number there, we went
$40
from
down.
$2.41 in
that's
2020.
Right here, yeah.
We-
13.
We went to
213.
213.
Yeah, but for the projection of 23,
Mhm.
you went to 260.
Yeah,
And you had the flat rate at 44.
right. Because it's going from 40 to going to 44. But we'll do more analysis on this, but we increased the base fees. We lowered for the lower users, we lowered their per 1,000-gallon rate. We added more to the higher end users. But we went from, $5.35 to 24, from 25,000 gallons of water to $4 to $8.50.
Right.
So the
Go ahead,
point
John.
is that we can raise the rates and we can adjust them, and it seems like we're off a bit. But is there another option for us? I don't know if it's crazy enough, but could we sell some water to Delray that's having such a problem with water? And you're smiling, so there's got to be some, you've thought about this before? No?
It's hard to sell water because we don't make enough to sell to supply their whole system. We can
Yeah.
augment their system. We just don't have enough to supply the entire system.
Yeah, when they had the problem right here on the island, I called the mayor and offered. And she said they were okay. Doesn't mean we can't offer it again, of
But they're
course.
going through some serious
Yeah, we
issues,
can,
right?
can make the offer
I
again.
mean, there'll be some temporary changes when they get to the construction of their new water plant where they may have some needs for some short-term pieces. But again, it's not enough to fix our budget
Miss.
hole, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think what we did is we kind of backloaded the rate structure. We kind of knew that because we didn't want to hurt the lower users, the one or two people living in a condo that didn't use a lot of water, but that we could find are the biggest users of the most water. So we backloaded the system. So those excess users cleaned it up. And then it puts more rate pressure back onto the lower users. So we're gonna have to look at each category, how much water we sold in each of those over that period of time.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to come back with. And David will come back and walk you through all of that probably over the next couple of months.
But in the meantime, Mr. Mayor, I assume that we're going to involve the vice mayor in kind of a action plan on how we're
Well,
going to
they're
address
going to
it.
get together and take a look to see which of the cells really reduce their consumption versus our plan. So at least we understand there's a baseline then that we know where we are. So then we can take a look at a projection for next year against the known data. We'll also measure the next few months to see if the previous few months were an anomaly, like you were saying, and like David was saying, that there was a drop off, but now it's starting to come back. If it's starting to come back, then we'll do a new projection. If it doesn't come back, then we really got to rethink this whole thing.
Exactly.
Because, we got two issues and they're fighting each other. One is, congratulations, they're using less water. On the other hand,
That's the good news.
we got a financial problem in our water facility. Now, you don't want to ding everybody that they're using less water. That's not fair. On the other hand, we've got a water plant that's going to lose over almost $700,000 next year. So we got to figure out what to do.
If you ding people because we need more water, it could backfire and they could use even less.
Well, and listen, we don't want to ding our residents. That's not fair. That's not what we're here for. So we got to figure something else out. But let's get a firm grip on what's really occurring.
Absolutely.
And so David will work with Natasha.
Yep.
Who developed the numbers originally.
Right.
And we'll take it from there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right.
John,
And-
you satisfied?
Excellent. No, I really, because of Natasha's involvement in this, and now that you're on the game and
Sure.
you don't have to rely on Ref.
Yeah, I mean,
You've got a team.
David has the experience. Natasha developed the original formulation, so we'll get the two together.
So we'll start to share that information and we'll make it one of the budget workshops. We'll so focus heavily on water and sewer and the rate structure. And one of our
Yeah.
special work sessions and come back with some of that August data too, and just really
Yep.
Yeah. and
hone in on
A
the.
similar
Yep.
thing is happening in sewer, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on that one. 'Cause-
Yep, that's true, right? Yep. And so, yeah, so sewer is the same idea, sewer, and I won't spend a lot of time, sewer, the same thing. We had the rate analysis predicted a 12% rate increase, and that's what we had predicted here as well, just as a preliminary budget. Yeah, we're kind of seeing the same thing here. We lower base fees. See on the bottom left-hand side, we lower base fees. And we change the consumption rate, right? But yeah, we'll look at that. We're just not generating enough revenue on that side to meet expenditures, but we'll do a special workshop and we'll get to the bottom of it.
But with that, before we get off of that, since we're having a rate structure in October, 2 months prior, so in the August mailer, we'll have to be telling them that they will be seeing the next rate increase as proposed. So we're really going to have to do mid-year adjustments or whatnot because of the statutory requirement. We have to give notice. So if the rate structure will stay on it, if everybody's okay with that and announce it, we can make mid-year adjustments thereafter, but we have to tell folks October 1, they will be expecting a rate increase as spelled out.
And you don't have to tell them the amount of the increase or decrease or whatever.
You gotta tell
but
them the
give
amount of the
notice it's
increase.
going to change.
We gotta tell them that it is, and then you could put in that notice, hey, we're talking about it in August, come join us, and look at it as we move forward.
Right.
It's just the notice period kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
because if you come in August and say we need to go even more, you're probably gonna have to wait till December to do that lift. So it'll be a mid-year kind of later adjustment.
So I don't think you understood what he said.
No,
You have to give him the number.
Give them a number.
Yeah, okay.
I was hoping we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
We give them a number and tell them we're evaluating it and give them a date so they can come to the budget workshop, those that really want to know and look at it.
Yeah.
But again, we have time, as David says, even with that $700,000 hit on the water fund, we still have 251 days at the end of year of cash on hand, which is now going to be our new metric, it seems. So we have time next year to make the adjustments. And we might see water sales come back. It could have been a blip in sales,
Yeah.
just a normal, natural, because if you go back, maybe David will take a look, go back over a 5-year period, you might see that every 5-6 years we take a drop and then it comes back. So it kind of moves. It's kind of an organic process.
Well, as the mayor said.
That's a lot. I know, I get it. It's a big
blip.
number, but, and the thing is we reduced it on the highest volume of water sales, which is the first couple of tiers is where we get a lot of our sales consistently, and we lowered the rates
At
there.
the last minute, I asked and Natasha did increase the first 2 tiers. Glad we did that at least, but we'll find out where it hits. So.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, no, absolutely. And so, yeah, so the wastewater side as well. And again, the wastewater side, right? 90-something% of the expenditures, right, are with the city of
Sure.
Delray Beach, so you
Yeah.
can see there that's what we're kind of projecting there to match up. But
Okay.
again, the sewer side has a healthy fund balance. There's the data there. Finally, just in terms of just picking up the pace, you'll see there on some of the last slide, that's our budget calendar for the remaining year. And do you have any questions?
Again, our financial picture is strong.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Even in the water and sewer funds where we're seeing a little uncomfortable and uneasiness, we have the reserves positioning us to address it without being in a crisis situation. We
Right.
can comfortably address it over the next fiscal year and make the necessary changes.
Time for questions?
Go right ahead.
So, first of all, I think this represents the quality of financial transparency and completeness, comprehensiveness that we now can expect. So I congratulate the work done by Marshall and David, your team, for an outstanding display of data Some of these are just maybe ignorant questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. And I have gotten some concern from residents. When we are in the procurement process, are we adhering to the expectation of getting at least 3 bids unless we have the opportunity to leverage intergovernment contracts, county, state, whatever, when we buy something that's expensive, where we can leverage on the contract that we could never match in terms of quantity or whatever. But aside from those kinds of, are we adhering to 3 bids on almost every, if not every, procurement we make, unless there's a situation where there's nobody else that we can go to?
Yes, absolutely. Now, case in point, and we'll talk a little bit more during manager's minute, we go out for sewer lining, we get 2 bids. That's it, came, went, followed the process, extended the process. Eric courted and talked to 2
You just
bidders.
couldn't get more.
Just
than
couldn't
2
get more bidders. Sometimes we just can't get people to the table. Right now, it's, I think, particularly strained. But sometimes in a government setting, the requirements and statutory rules we must follow to procure something sometimes scare away smaller vendors that wish to play in the sandbox with us, just aren't going to go and sign these contracts, these insurance requirements, reporting delays on invoice. They tend to move off of that a bit, but where we can, we leverage cooperative purchasing to the extent that it's available and makes the most sense. EMS vehicle, we'll do that. Sometimes we have sole source type acquisitions for certain motors and pumps because only one person makes the motor and pump, and the motor and pump is tied into the whole treatment system that you can't use another person's motor. So our SCADA systems, we have to use the same computer system components. You can't interchange them. If we can, we will, but sometimes you just can't. But we do, we go out to bid for everything we do. We have a lot of big bidding. That's another big push of that support service. You start adding fire, we're buying a heck of a lot more stuff now. And that's why Eric over in support services is going to really start looking at the purchasing side along with the HR side. How do we tighten that up? Get up to date, get up to speed. If Pat was here, he'd probably be shaking a little bit because he'd be like, hey, you want me to go on $5,000 job, get 3 quotes? People won't quote back because they understand that he's going with the lowest quote, and some people won't respond because it's the hassle of, hey, can you fix this AC unit? I need 3 quotes because it's going to cost more than $1,500. That's we spend $1,500 chasing $1,500. So we have to make some adjustments. It's a good point to make that we do, but on the big ticket stuff, we're out to bid. We're on Demand Star, sealed bid process. The loan, we went through a unique process and we're able to get 8 bidders that gave us 11 proposals. So we do that. Yeah.
All right. Well, and it's important for those who are watching and for those who will watch on the video recordings to know that. So I appreciate the detailed response. The other point here is that ARA kind of saved us with that extra money that we got. All right. We're not going to get that next year. So I would encourage and applaud efforts like I think you're doing with, is it Gulfstream, to provide additional services for additional revenue. And can I ask quickly what the status is on that?
We'll talk a little bit more during the meeting.
But it'll
Jeff and I have
impact
spent a
our
lot of
budget.
time. Yep.
It will impact our budget if you're able to pull that off.
It'll impact an enterprise fund, correct? It would take a very stable fund and make it very, very stable. I mean, for the lack of a better word. So, but we also, I know Tricia and I talked about it a little bit yesterday. We're gonna have to go start digging for some grants too on some infrastructure. But because we had and made that expense on climate vulnerability and assessment, there is a new grant program that the governor has put in place, is very committed to that. Since we did a vulnerability assessment, we know certain work needs to be done. So we're gonna try to chase to what extent it's been very difficult to get money from the state. So
Since Jeff is here, I have a question for you because I don't think you'll be in the rest of the town meeting that we're going to have later. I don't want to use your time, but I have a question is, do we get revenue from permits for buildings putting in lightning systems, lightning protection systems in their buildings.
Lightning protection systems do require a building permit under the Florida Building Code.
Yet there's no requirement for a building to have a lightning protection system. So we have buildings here in Island Beach that have no lightning rods or lightning protection systems. And there's no need or reason for them to pursue it unless they assess the risk as being unreasonable. No?
Many of the buildings actually do have them. And as someone who goes up on the roof, I will tell you that many of them are in disrepair
Yeah. Well, disrepair or don't exist.
or don't exist.
So my question is, in the certification process, because I have to believe some of our revenue is going to be because of certifications, not just because we get a lot of permits from renovations, it's from recertification requirements. Can we add that? Is that important enough, do you think?
If the commission feels it necessary, you can always add whatever you want to add to a recertification process, but which is a whole other subject that we're going to be getting into based on the changes with the state.
Okay, I just wanted to pose it as a question. There is no requirement for lightning protection. And if lightning hits one of these buildings, it can knock out the electrical system. There's no air conditioning. I mean, they have to evacuate. That's over. And you don't get a repair that quickly in weeks, take months. But anyways, it's an issue. Okay, thank you very much. I didn't want to take more of your time on that. The other question I have for David is, and just to clarify, the CLCPN, the request is in, but we don't have approval yet. When do we expect to get approval? I know that we talked about this more than we want to, but
What was that again? I'm sorry.
the CLCPN, we don't have approval. We put in the request. Yes, that's great, but how long will it take for us to get approval? Because
Our
that's key.
COPCN expert, resident
I
expert
love
now.
that COCPN.
Which title up there?
Tell us approval will come next Tuesday.
I wish I could.
And within the time frame. I'm not asking for a date.
So the first step is to go to the EMS Advisory Council, and that date is on July 12th. So they'll make the preliminary approval, and then it will go to the Board of County Commissioners around September, October. So we should know something around,
Wow.
I say November.
Oh, that's a long time. That's longer than I was thinking, but okay, that's amazing. Government at work. Also, I want to just state for the record that, yes, we're holding the line, not even reducing. We're managing our millage in a way, in our budget, in a way that's responsible, in an effort to protect the residents, the taxpayers from unreasonable increases. But the fact is, their tax bills that they receive in the mail will be going up. And that's because of evaluations, I understand. But the fact also is, as you said, and I want to applaud the point that we are in the middle of a reset for this town. That for the first time in its history, we have a whole new organization going forward. And as you said, the transition for Highland Beach is not insignificant. It is a tremendous difference. So that for the next year or so, we're pulling in the reins as much as possible on this budget before we can start to expect some savings to come into play because of having our own EMS fire operation and without relying on Del Rey. Is that fair to say?
That's a very good summary. Yes.
Okay. Lido Bridge, is that really in danger that we have to spend 100 grand on it this year?
It's roads too. So there's some patching we have to do, and it may not just be in Bellito, but the bridge, we had a bridge report and there's 3 or 4 spots that need, I have no idea what it costs, but it's not the whole 100,000, it's for the bridge.
Okay, it just seems to me that that's kind of also a placeholder, like a placeholder for the signs, the town signs, north and south border.
Yeah, I didn't take a structural engineering class. So I'm a little weak when they say hairline cracks, fix this, sand this out, fix this piece. I'm not sure on the cost. Pat basically talked with Baxter Woodman, gave him a number, probably 50, 60,000. It seems like everything costs 50 grand or more anymore, but somewhere around there. And then there's some road work that Pat wanted to do, some areas that needed some touch-up work. And he wanted to have those funds available to do some road rehabilitation on the side roads, not A1A. This is,
All right.
Highland Beach Drive, Russell. I mean,
I'm
we'll
hoping-
spread the love.
I'm hoping that it's a good placeholder and we'll be spending all of it. But just 2 more things. And then I'll turn it over to the mayor. Contingency. We have a line item for $25,000 for contingency. Is that enough? What is the?
It used to be a
practice?
lot more. It used to be, Tricia, what was it? Used to be like $200,000 they would put in there, 150. And I was like, no. We'll just put in 25 and we'll know where that's at. So 25, we tend to use right around that, a little bit less for some unanticipated, you don't know what it is that's going to happen. I couldn't guess today, but every year we seem to have a, 10, 15, 20. This year, I think we're already up to 22,000 on moving some funds around to cover something we didn't anticipate, a change, a cost structure change,
All right.
unfunded mandates, good stuff like that.
Not a question, but really is VFD. What is that again?
VFD?
Yeah, VFD at the water plant.
Variable frequency drive.
Okay. And the whole point was that we have to replace it and it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. And again, these are preliminary figures. As I said before, I'd rather, be high on expenses, right? And low on revenue. So I want to be wrong in the right direction. So, but at the end of the day, it's a good preliminary budget. We've tried to account for all of the moving pieces, and we'll get closer to as we get closer to September.
Yeah, we'll each time we'll do it again, July 7th with the FAB, July 19th, we come back to this commission. We have to do the tentative maximum rate. So this is what you're looking at right now. I would tell you is your maximum. We'll go
Right.
potentially could go down, depends on what you want to do. We won't go any higher. So that gives residents a cap that this is the max rate. And then again, we'll come in August up to twice or maybe 3 times to discuss it even further. So we're going to continue to focus, get more detail, more information, more activity. We'll see how things move. Yep.
So I think it's an outstanding job. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Don't sit down. I got a question on the sewage treatment rate. Looks like we're anticipating almost a 10% increase. Projecting 985,000 up from 900,000.
For sewage, right?
Yeah.
So that should be right here.
On page 49 on the detail, or 12 of 12.
Right. So
depending
here's
on
the
how you want
sewer.
to look at it.
Actually, here's the sewer revenue, right? So our sewer revenue right now, we're $207,000 below where I thought we would be. Now, how did that happen? Well, here's the rate schedule. We lowered our base fees from $44.03. We lowered them down to $29.56, and then we increased them up back to $33.39. But then what it did is then we put a cap of 20,000 gallons. That's for 2 months. So it's almost like a 10,000 gallon cap
Yeah,
on how much we can charge you, right?
yeah.
And so you can see there on the chart, look at the chart. I lowered my base fees and I increased my per thousand rate, but then what I did is I capped that. And so if you look, and then see it says commercial gets charged for all usage, but that only represents less than 2% of our total population.
Right.
So, that's one of the things that we got to look at that, how it's configured, the rate. But right now, what we're anticipating is what Raf Tellis had said, 12% on the sewer side. Or maybe what we can do is we can relook at the cap. Maybe the cap is 20,000 per month as opposed to 20,000 gallons every 2 months.
Right.
But,
You're talking about the revenue side. I was talking about the cost.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
We have a budget this year of 900,000. You're projecting 985,000.
On the sewer expenses?
Yeah,
Sewer revenue.
sewer treatment.
Yeah,
budget.
you're looking at the line item of the budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's included there where you see operations. See, it's $1.552 million. Yeah. So included in that $1.552 million is that specific line item to the city of Delray for their services.
Yeah, so, but we've got a budget this year of 900,000 with expenses through 630 of 681.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, does our contract call for a 10% increase
3.
or 3% increase?
Yep.
So why are we projecting 985,000?
Well, that's just in their contract. There are other expenses associated with the sewer fund.
Yeah, no,
itself.
this is a line item. I'm not making myself clear.
Oh, no.
The line item of sewage treatment, City of Delray. It's line item.
So you're saying you're concerned that we might not make the 900 mark and then we're projecting for 985 next year. Because those are the
Right.
charges based on meter reads. So we may be overshooting it. That would kind of balance. We can
Might-
take a closer look at that.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that the 985 might be high.
Mhm.
Maybe it should be more like 925.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, we'll look at
I
that.
just
Duly
asked you to
noted.
take another look. That's all.
Absolutely, sir.
That's all.
Yes, sir. I'll highlight it right now.
Yeah.
Just make a note and double check it
10-4.
when you get back. That's all.
That's a good eye.
The other thing is in the budget for library. Do we have enough money? Do you have enough?
We do.
I ask you every year.
I appreciate
I want to make sure you got everything you need.
you do. Thank you.
Okay, library is very important to this town.
While enhancing the audio visual and I guess to give presentations, you're going to have 10,000 or so in there for that.
Well, all the equipment's.
It's in there.
Paid
It's in
for, set up, good to go. So there are no added expenses in handling that.
And if you look at this printout, you go to discretionary sales tax. We also have funds to redo one of the conference rooms or the smaller community room to remodel that to be
Right.
more user friendly for small groups. So that's in the
That
discretionary
wouldn't be
sales.
in there. Okay.
So that is an additional set of allotments to capital expense in the library to dress up a little
So
bit of
the point is
space.
that it increases, the capability and the service
Right.
offered by the library.
So
which
you're
is-
good to go.
we
Just wanna make-
support
Every year I
100%.
ask. Okay, good. Okay, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Anything there, Peggy? Any questions?
Yeah. 2 comments. Hi, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. I'm up here in Tallahassee visiting with, meeting with 100 business and government leaders. And I wanted to just add to the discussion of water and sewer, something for our longer term analysis and thoughts, that there is concern that by 2030, South Florida, through the Keys already is underway, but South Florida will be in a water shortage that will not be very reversible. And so there's discussion and concern that North and Central Florida will be piping water south. I wanted to just let everyone know that as we are very happy and settled with our own water plant, which is drilled down further into a different aquifer than the rest of South Florida. And so we may want to not consider any kind of sales, certainly backup to our nearby communities is always neighborly and a given, but just be aware that there is a 8 to 10 year projection of major crisis in the South Florida area. And secondly, in the same time frame, 2030, the outfall pipes, which distribute somewhat tempered and reclaimed sewage to the ocean, will be by state law will be mandated closed. And so between now and 2030, there is an outfall pipe still operating in Delray Beach, and that will have to be closed. And so they and we, as one of their users, will have to be looking at different alternative methods once that is closed, that outfall is closed. Just keep that in mind looking ahead, 8 years. Otherwise, great job by Marshall, David, our staff and our commission as always. We're just a great town and I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peg.
Thank you,
David,
Mayor.
pleasure having you here. Thank you for a good job. And Marshall.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Depends on the
Mark.
year.
If nobody else has anything, I think I'll go on to future budget meetings. The next one is on the 19th at 1:30. That's a town commission special meeting. Next is on August the 4th at noon, then August 25th at noon. Then September 6th at 5:01, has to be after 5 o'clock. And then on September 21st is the final one at 5:01. These are all obviously public meetings. Everyone is welcome. We'll move on to town commission comments. John, anything to add?
To this part, no.
No, okay. Evelyn, anything to add?
No, but we need to move on to our next meeting.
Yep, we'll save it to next meeting then. Peggy, anything to add for this meeting?
All good, Mayor. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'm good also. David, anything to add? No? Marshall?
Yes, it starts. No, just kidding.
Okay, it is exactly 1:30, so we will adjourn for this meeting. Let's take a